I don't want to be the McDonald's CEO that's biting a tiny bite. I want to take a very big bite. And with the Dream Shop, I took an extremely big bite. We've been manufacturing these power attic ventilations since the 1960s. You've got to be up on that roof, and you've got to be installing your own product. And you need to do it yourself to really have that aha moment. We realize we're making people work harder to install our product, and we should be able to make some small modifications to our product in order to make it far easier on the end consumer in order to do that. I imagine there's probably thousands of people that have told us that in the past, but it really, really comes home when you're up there doing that project yourself.
Hi everyone, it's Daisy McCarty, one of our fractional CMOs here at the Marketing Blender. And today I've invited Ryan McConnell, president of Ventamatic and the manufacturer of the Maxx Air and QAire ventilation product brands, to talk to us about the changing landscape that we find ourselves in. Over the last 50 years, certainly over the last 10, we've seen a lot of shifts in what it means to be a brand in the United States and to evolve from a long-time U.S. manufacturing brand into a brand that we want to have known globally. So talk to me, Ryan, about the history of Ventamatic and what's been happening over the last 4 decades and how innovation has been evolving.
Well, thank you, Daisy, for having us in the studio here this morning. We really appreciate the offer and are really excited to talk about Ventamatic and its long storied history. So Ventamatic has been around since really 1948. And so if you think about that, we celebrated our 75th anniversary 3 years ago, I guess, if the math is correct. And if you can think about the generations of people that have truly built this company in what it is today. And I mean, I think we could reach back with the people that are presently employed almost 4 generations in some cases. So Ventamatic was originally founded by a guy named Henry Butler in Dallas. And he invented a new way of venting your attic, essentially. And that was a big innovation at the time. People hadn't really thought about putting a mechanical ventilation on their attic up until that point. They just had most likely they had a hole in their roof that was covered by a piece of metal, essentially. We were born truly of innovation, really, is what I like to say about Ventamatic. The company was subsequently bought by the Siegel family in the early 50s. And the Siegel family then took what Henry Butler had started and turned it more into something that would provide appliances for your kitchen, which at the time the Siegel family was doing lots of kitchen cabinetry, and they did it all throughout the United States. So Ventamatic became one of the primary ways to ventilate a kitchen, is really where that started. So you had innovation there from the very beginning, so from the start all the way to when the Siegels bought the family. Subsequently, in the 1960s, we expanded on that, what we call power attic ventilation. And power attic ventilation is simply where you hook up a motor and a fan, and then you suck out the hot air from your attic. And that's what we became known as. And so the name Ventamatic actually came from that 1950s like wash-o-matic, that kind of automation and the kitchen of the future or the home of the future. That's what Ventamatic really came from. Innovation obviously was part of our DNA very early on. From that time in the 1960s and 70s, we then expanded into things like whole house ventilation, into bathroom exhaust ventilation, and then also into portable ventilation, which is really what we're known for mostly today.
Excellent. So as you're looking at the newest family of products, what would you say innovation mostly focuses on for Ventamatic now? Is it engineering, cost control? Is it customer experience? Is how fast you can bring a new product to market? What are the factors that you're looking at?
I think all of those things you just said are the important things. If we were just to focus just on cost alone, we could find ourselves simply making Me Too products that there are people globally that can do that far better than we can today. What we feel Ventamatic really provides from a value to the market perspective is quality, first and foremost, is we don't want to produce a product that's going to break down within a year or so. But we're also not trying to make something that's going to last for 200 years as well, because the market's not asking for that, really. So quality is first and foremost. And then ultimately the customer experience. Being a US-based company that has been around since 1948, it's amazing the number of calls we get from people that said, hey, I've got this thing. It looks like it was put on my house in 1972 and the motor just burned out on it. Is there something that you can help me do? And quite frankly, that's one of our points of pride, is we can still help people that installed something back from 1972.
That's amazing. One of the things that I've noticed as we've been looking at some of the product updates over the last year is how invested people are in, like, even what color,
Yes.
what color do I get to have? And we've had, polls and surveys to gather that kind of customer feedback. And I think that today's customers really do want to be part of the innovation process and part of, what does this look like? What does it feel like? Is this meeting my needs? So I think we're in a very interesting time for innovation in terms of how that information is gathered and used.
Yeah, and if you think about it, social media oftentimes is looked at by kind of, we can call it traditional older companies, as something it's a newfangled invention. How am I going to utilize something like TikTok for my business today? And really, that interaction with customers, to be able to float an idea out there and see what their input is extremely important to us today. And we've run a number of our campaigns that we've run in the past year have been centered around that, really trying to get some interaction with customers. And I find it absolutely fascinating, the things that I think people will weigh in on, or the direction they think that the market will go. I'm always humbled by letting the general public comment on that, and I oftentimes get very different answers.
That's true. One thing I'd like to point out for B2B companies, as you're looking at doing market research in today's world, I can tell you right now, I've quoted a lot of these jobs, and $20,000 to $30,000 just to ask your target market one question is very common. Take your questions to social media, and you can get great answers and great insights for a fraction of the cost. So Ryan, talk to me about where some of your best product innovation ideas come from.
Sometimes we get product innovation ideas that come from internally, so from our engineering department. I get emails from a variety of different people internally that will say, hey, have we ever thought about this? Have we ever thought about that? Oftentimes it's people looking in the marketplace and seeing something in the marketplace that we don't presently manufacture, and they question us on whether this is a feasible market for us. And then many times it is the actual customer base, whether that is a retailer or consumer, that will basically somehow contact us and say, hey, would you consider doing this to solve my problem? And really that's what it's all about, is we try to engineer solutions and create solutions that solve problems. Because if we're making gadgets that don't solve human problems, then typically we won't be successful.
Right, it's a solution in search of a problem.
Yes.
Which means you will always be hunting for revenue.
Right, precisely.
So we talked about customer feedback in terms of data that you're able to gather, e-commerce, Amazon, platforms like that. Is there anything that you see in the data that helps drive your next innovation decisions?
So one of the things we've been playing with recently is AI, and especially the LLMs. How can an LLM take a large amount of data and then be able to parse through that and give us actionable information? So oftentimes our reviews, so being able to download all our reviews, have an LLM parse through that, and then tell us what are the most common words that people are using, whether it's a complaint, what is the most common complaint, or what is the most common attribute that people are happy about with this product. That's how we feel data, large amounts of data that we're able to collect, how that can really help us today.
Nice. So I want to dive into the Dream Shop next. This is a fun project that you've taken on over the last few months, and it's all about customer engagement and getting that customer feedback and getting people excited about the brand. And you've also had some epiphanies as you've gone through this process. So talk to us about the Dream Shop project, how this came about and what you've been learning.
So one of the things, as the president of a manufacturing company, that I felt was going to be very important is being able to install and use virtually every product that you manufacture. right? It seems like a pretty basic thing that you need to be doing. Very similar to the McDonald's CEO that took a bite of a cheeseburger in front of their audience, and he barely took a tiny little bite on the edge. I don't want to be the McDonald's CEO that's biting a tiny bite. I want to take a very big bite. And with the Dream Shop, I took an extremely big bite. And so we had access to a barn that's pretty close to my house. And that barn was just screaming for ventilation and to be able to utilize almost every single one of our products, to be able for me to install pretty much on my own every single one of those products became something that I thought would be a great use of my weekend time. And I can tell you it's taken up an awful lot of weekend time. And so getting into the Dream Shop, sometimes you look at projects and you think to yourself, oh, this will be easy. This will be a 30-minute project. And unfortunately, a number of different things, even this past weekend was working on, was electrical. And by the way, I don't advocate anyone doing their own electrical work. And I certainly, that's far out of my capability. As my wife described me, she said, you're handy, but you're really not that handy in terms of doing the electrical. And so that's been a really big challenge for me because I've been really excited about installing my products. But if you install your product and it's on a bad electrical circuit, or it's certainly going to be an exercise in futility, I'll put it that way. Mm-hmm.
So talk to me about the thing that you discovered when you were up on the roof of that barn and you realized, oh, we missed a piece.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
We've been manufacturing these power attic ventilations since the 1960s. And it's something that has typically been installed on a roof that has shingles. But oftentimes, our products are used on some sort of roof that has what we call an R panel or some sort of shape to it. And the bottom of our power attic ventilators is flat. And so anytime you simply take a flat surface and you put it on something that has a bit of corrugation to it, you're going to have gaps. And those gaps, obviously, animals can get in, water can get in, all kinds of things can get in. And we realized, oh my gosh, there's an entire portion of our market, which there's a very large part of the market that we service that is installing these on some sort of R panel roof or some corrugation roof. And so we realized we're making people work harder to install our product, and we should be able to make some small modifications to our product in order to make it far easier on the end consumer in order to do that. That truly is one of those exercises that you've got to be up on that roof and you've got to be installing your own product, and you need to do it yourself to really have that aha moment. I imagine there's probably thousands of people that have told us that in the past, but it really, really comes home when you're up there doing that project yourself.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So the takeaway here is B2B business owners and leaders, if you have not used your own product recently, give it a trial run. See how you think about it. If you were coming to it as an amateur, as somebody who hasn't seen it before, hasn't done it before, hasn't looked at it before, what are the things that you notice if you bring a fresh perspective to the table? So when you discover a gap like that, you've got options. We can design and build and create a solution in-house, or we can look for something that's existing in the market or somebody who's already good at solving that type of problem. As you're looking at product innovation, I'd like to hear how you determine build versus buy.
And I'll give you the actual Dream Shop corrugated story. There was someone in the marketplace when we started looking for solutions. There was someone in the marketplace that could do that. And so what we like to do is we do like to have partnerships with other domestic U.S. manufacturers and distributors that we can bolt on to our products. Long term, it's inevitable. We will find our own solutions to these as well. But what our partner that we found on this, he provides a solution right off the shelf. He's been working on it for a number of years. He's a very bright and talented guy and an engineer, and we should be using that immediately because we know we can solve the problem immediately using this distributor partner. And he'll benefit from it, and we'll benefit from it. But obviously, long term, there's probably some significant cost savings that we can get from doing things different ways. Doesn't mean that we'll leave our partner behind. We'll continue to sell his product, but we'll also sell ours as well. So, to answer your question, in this case, it was a build. We're going to build it ourselves, and we're going to buy it as well. But a lot of times, it's the market that will dictate that as well. That will dictate the build or buy. So.
you guys have been here in Texas for
Long time.
75
Yeah.
plus years, and you have your flagship manufacturing facility right here in Texas within driving distance. That's where you came from to come here to the Blender today. Talk to me about how being a U.S. manufacturer helps you move faster. How does it help you prototype things faster, and how does it give you greater flexibility in what you're able to do?
So I do like to describe us, although we are U.S. and Texas based, is we are international in our capabilities. And so being based in the U.S. does allow us to do fun stuff like, any given afternoon I can basically upset the apple cart in our engineering team's day, and which they absolutely, I'm sure they love. But I can
very structured.
Right.
I love it when you just throw it there.
I can walk in and I can say, hey guys, have we thought of this, or have you ever seen this, or have we ever done this? And that type of great interaction, to be able to walk, my office is a good 20 steps away from the engineering lab. And that's for a purpose, is because I take great interest in that. I'm passionate about innovation for the company, and I want to be there and I want to see it when we're testing it out. And so just that proximity to some really bright individuals that have lots of drive, it makes a big difference. I would argue even the people, there's a lot of people that use Asian manufacturing, Asian engineering teams and things like that. There's also a bit of a cultural divide there sometimes, to where just the idea or the problem you're describing to someone who is in a engineering shop in Asia, they've never seen it, right? They don't understand what you're talking about. Their building codes are very different, and how they build and construct things are very different. I do feel like our in-house engineering team gives us a great strategic advantage. The fact that it's based in Mineral Wells, even more of an advantage and a plus.
Very nice. So I think it was Peter Drucker who said there are only two drivers of success in business. There's innovation and there's marketing.
Right.
So let's talk about how marketing has had to evolve, especially over about the last 10 years. Is Amazon changing how you launch products? What are the key factors that are impacting how you go to market with these products?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Amazon evolves underneath our feet every day, and it's really quite remarkable. So in the early days of Amazon, it was how much you could get onto the marketplace, and how much and how fast you could produce it. It was a race to grow with Amazon, and there was a simple, if you did X, you would get Y. Well, things changed. I would really say markedly during COVID, things dramatically changed in terms of how Amazon, how we related to Amazon. And there was a marked difference in the amount of Asian suppliers who were popping up on the marketplace, which was a little interesting because, we, from our perspective, we thought, well, we've got domestic distribution, we're drop shipping direct to consumers. It's going to be very difficult for Asian companies to do that. Well, Amazon obviously finds a way, and they became, a gigantic marketplace for Asian companies to both direct ship out of Asia as well as having domestic distribution. Some of our innovation that we've had in the past 2 to 3 years has been copied by Asian suppliers within 2 to 3 months of introduction. 2 to 3 months of introduction. We're barely getting going on a product on Amazon and really catching a gear when somebody else does a posting right next to us, same exact look. They argue it's the same exact product, and oftentimes at a major cost advantage to what we can do. And so we have to look at our innovation slightly differently today than we did in the past, to where in many cases I don't necessarily want to have a product that I launch on Amazon, right? I don't necessarily want to take my best innovation and put it on Amazon. I might put that on my own website and our own social media and really promote more there. I might find another e-commerce partner that has some reach, but then won't necessarily allow my competition to come in within a 2 to 3 month period and sell up against me, right? And so that's really framed for us really how small the world marketplace is in terms of some consumer products manufacturing has really changed the way we approach the market and how we approach Amazon with new innovation.
I know one of the things you and I have talked about a lot over the past year has been the importance of brand, because that's the thing that protects profit margin better than almost anything else. And it's interesting, Ventamatic has been in business for such a long time, and yet, like so many B2B companies, it's kind of been behind the scenes when it comes to capturing the attention of consumers and giving them something to anchor for. So I know that the Maxx Air brand has been coming to the forefront in terms of, oh, people know this brand name. This is a U.S.-based company.
Right.
If we need something, we can talk to customer service. And I think some of the additional peripherals that you have around the product itself, brand video, educational content, installation videos, those are some of the things that I believe U.S. brands do a much better job at investing in alignment with what their target personas want. And it's very difficult for other competitors outside the U.S. to do that in a way that makes people feel like, oh, I understand exactly what I'm seeing here. I know what to trust. I know who's talking to me. So give me a little bit of an insight into what we're working on now in terms of brand and building out the kinds of content that help people anchor to the Maxx Air and Ventamatic brands.
To really start with, Ventamatic built a number of different brands in the past. So we've been known as Cool Attic. We've been known as Ventamatic, of course. Maxx Air was introduced, I believe, in the late 80s, early 90s. And so we haven't always been Maxx Air. And we made that strategic decision kind of around 2019 to really get behind one individual brand name and push that brand name solely. And what we've decided, alongside some other, some very bright people that have told us this is what we should consider, is to make sure that we're differentiating that brand by showing that we are a U.S.-based supplier, showing that we understand the customer's needs because we are users ourselves of that product. And so, yes, brand videos, installation videos are so important in differentiation. And I really believe someone was challenging me on this the other day. They said, well, you guys are spending all this time and money on installation videos, and the Chinese and whoever else, the Asians, are going to be able to come in with AI, and they're going to easily be able to replicate what you're doing for a fraction of the cost. But maybe I'm just old-fashioned, but I do feel like people can tell the difference. At this point in time, people can tell the difference. Yeah. And being authentic with your brand, doing things like we're doing with Dream Shop, where, like as I'm doing installations, I might break something accidentally. I think at one point when I was taking down some lights, I smashed about 3 or 4 different overheads in the process of doing that. That's reality. That's the reality of installation. Is you are going to have things that don't go perfectly, and so showing that the authentic side of the brand. What we're also going to be working on here in the future is how we build the product, taking a deeper dive. I love the show How It's Made series on Discovery Channel, and I could watch that for hours. And so we'd like to take a little bit deeper dive on the how it's made side and to try to show the authenticity of who we are and what we do on a day-to-day basis.
I think it's interesting. We've already reached the point where people are kind of sick of AI. And AI itself, its favorite places to go to get reliable information are forums like Reddit, where they're really, really good at keeping the bots out.
Right.
Where it has to be that human interaction. It has to be the real social engagement. So I think there's a great advantage for companies that are willing to stick with real human beings. There are lots of places you can leverage AI where it's not that direct trust building piece, but keeping the trust building piece human to human. Most people are not going to put in the time and effort that it takes to actually do that. And your ideal customers, they like buying American made.
Right.
Like they already care about that. And
right.
Yes, they can tell the difference. And if we're giving them enough of those trust triggers, then it's helping build resilience in the brand itself. So I like that that's the direction that we're maintaining. And it stays true to the legacy of Ventamatic.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it was innovation, it was automation, it was all these things. And still, it's about solving real human problems. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about staying relevant as you're modernizing the brand for a younger generation of buyers. And at this point, we're still talking about like Gen X as being the younger generation, but we've got the millennials coming right behind that. Talk to me about what you see for the brand going forward.
Well, I think one of the things that's really important is being relatable and staying relatable to the end consumer market. So, for instance, I think with Gen X generation, to be able to see people that look like them doing the installation videos and things like that, to be using the same language that they use in marketing and things like that. There's definitely a different approach from baby boomers to Gen X to millennials in terms of how you speak to them and the simple language that you use, right? And so what I'm hoping to do is bring, we have some great old videos like shot in the early 80s, and we've got some great old, like catalogs and things like that from the 1970s. What I want to make sure that we're doing is we're still using that. We're showing that we are, that demonstrates that we are a older established company, but then using more modern techniques, whether it's video, whether it's utilizing a little bit of AI in order to show how things work to the modern generation. Like instead of having just like a hand illustrated design, we'll use a little bit of AI to show how air moves through a house or something like that. So it's more relatable.
Exactly. All right, final round of questions, rapid fire. Without giving your competitors an advantage, what's one product gap you still see in the ventilation market?
That's a pretty tricky question, but I would say this. The present state of building homes in the United States, how we build homes, we are making them tighter and more efficient. So you can think of your home as an envelope, and homes used to be an envelope that wasn't sealed very well, had a lot of seams on it, and that weren't taped down, or the envelope wasn't completely taped off. So today, that envelope is very taped off, and that means that there is not a lot of air circulation, fresh air coming into your home. And when that happens, as we know, nature abhors a vacuum. And so the home will bring in fresh air into the space through places you don't want it coming. And that can be through electrical outlets. Sometimes that could come through your plumbing system and things like that. And so I really do believe there's a place for fresh air in the future. And you see things recently on TikTok, they're talking about the Scandinavian way of burping a home, or the German way of burping a home. And even if it's 20 degrees outside, they open up the doors and they let lots of fresh air in. It's cooling the house when it's 20 degrees outside, but it is bringing in a huge wave of fresh air. Well, there's something to that. We presently offer a couple different products that introduce fresh air into the home on a consistent basis that is actually filtered. And then if the air is too hot or if it's too humid, then it doesn't actually bring that air in. But I do think that's a major part of the market that a lot of people think, well, I'll put an air cleaner in my home and that will do the trick. You're just cleaning the stale air that's inside of there. You're not introducing, truly all of the benefits of outdoor air into your home. So I personally think that there's lots of room for innovation there. We're just on the very forefront of that from our perspective, but we're definitely going to do more there.
Right. Well, I worked with a lot of HVAC brands over the last 15 years, and I was writing about sick building syndrome at least 10 years ago, probably 15. So it's a problem that's been getting worse and worse, and it hasn't been adequately addressed, especially for the residential market. So that's exciting. Talk to me about one myth about ventilation. What do people believe that just ain't so?
Well, a lot of people believe that if you can't feel it, it's not working. And I'll give you an example. So we make a giant 60-inch fan, and our reviews oftentimes, they're just cracking on the fan, saying, I can barely feel it move. Well, it's moving 15,000 CFM, so cubic feet per minute, of air inside of an envelope. And let's say you're just moving the air inside of a warehouse or something like that. Well, this giant 60-inch fan, that's not what it's designed to do, have you feel that air come across your body. It doesn't have that evaporative cooling effect, essentially, or the wind chill effect. And so that's smaller high-velocity fans are designed for that. And so that's one of the biggest myths is bigger means I'm going to feel it more. Sometimes bigger means you're not going to feel it as much, but it's still doing a certain job that you really need inside any type of warehouse space or commercial space.
And if you did ramp that thing up so they could feel it, they would be like, this is so noisy.
Right, exactly.
It's too noisy.
Exactly.
All right, final question. If you could redesign one category of fans from the ground up, what would you scrap and start over on?
Small household fans oftentimes are done from a cost perspective, and we don't really play in this category very much. We stay away from it. We're in larger industrial style ventilation. But smaller fans for the home have been engineered so that there's so little cost involved with these. But at the same time, there's lots of safety issues around those. When you take out a lot of cost with the motor, you sometimes can run up into overheating of a motor. And I find that trend a little bit disturbing, where people are going so inexpensively that they are forgetting the safety element of that. And there's also that disposable quality to that product as well. I would love to see more homeowners and consumers place value on quality and something that's going to last for 10 to 15 years instead of being complacent with, well, this fan just quit after a year and a half and I'm just going to throw it away and buy a new one. I would really love to see that fan category change, be more quality driven and more safety driven here in the near future.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. Any final words for other longstanding B2B organizations that are evolving into the future? Brand, product development, innovation, marketing.
Yeah, so evolution is the key to the game. As we said, Ventamatic in the early days was only an attic ventilation company, and then it turned into more of a Ventahood style company. I would say that the key to our success over time has been our ability to identify trends and retool the business to satisfy that marketplace. We still do some of the early products, so we do lots of power attic ventilation. It's not something you just drop and then you discontinue and you move into something else. You keep the old traditional lines, but you constantly be looking for new opportunities to evolve. I think that's the name of the game.
All right, fantastic. Ventamatic cools your attic. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning into the Marketing Blender Show, where we talk about marketing, branding, innovation, and revenue growth. Onward and upward.